Tonight we will be talking about Catherine the Great and the interesting life she led. So close your eyes, lay your head on the pillow and drift off to sleep. Sophie Friederike August von Anhalt-Zerbst-Domburg, but better known as Catherine the Great, was born on the 2nd of May 1729 in Stettin, Poland. She was the daughter of Johanna Elisabeth Holstein-Gottorp, a minor German princess, and Christian August, Prince of Anhalt-Zerbst. Life was not easy for young Catherine, for many reasons, the main one being the treatment received from her mother Joanna. Joanna was disappointed that Catherine had been born a girl, as she was hoping for a male heir. This led her to often lash out at her daughter for minor offences, the most notable of these occurring when Catherine was a teenager. Her mother took her to a nunnery and said, "If you do not get married, you will end up here." This, among many other instances, forced Catherine to obey her mother. Joanna believed that the way to put her unwanted daughter to the most possible use would be to marry her off to an upper-class man, specifically one that was richer than her husband. Catherine was an intellectual and often annoyed her tutors by asking questions that only boys should ask. This infuriated Joanna as well. Joanna kept Catherine and her marriage prospects in the back of her mind until 1742, when Catherine's brother, Wilhelm Christian, died at the age of 12 from scarlet fever. Wilhelm was much loved by Joanna, and his death left a large impact on the family. When, after many months, Joanna had time to get over her grief, she was now fully focused on Catherine and getting her wed. Joanna put her daughter through countless meetings with possible suitors, berating her every time she made even a single mistake. Catherine began to see marriage as an escape from her mother. Catherine first met Peter in 1739 when she was 10 years old. Peter was 11 at the time. It was noticed that she had an initial disgust for him. Peter was sickly, and as time passed, he grew to be an alcoholic. This was a quality much disliked by Catherine. Catherine and her mother were summoned to Russia in 1744 when Catherine was 15 years old. She was going to marry Peter Ulrich, heir to the Russian throne. Joanna used her many connections to arrange this marriage. She was summoned by Empress Elizabeth, who had chosen her nephew Peter as her heir and was looking for a bride for him. Catherine and her mother arrived at the Winter Palace in Russia on January 16, 1744, in a procession of 4 carriages. Peter saw Catherine as a friend, rather than his future wife. Catherine, however, determined to make the best of her situation, began her Russian education. As the pair grew closer, Peter admitted to Catherine that he was in fact not in love with her, but he was merely doing what his aunt wanted. This worried Catherine, as she was desperate for the marriage to go ahead, as this would greatly increase her status. From this moment on, Catherine decided to do her best to impress Empress Elizabeth, Peter's aunt. In Russia, in the 1700s, the religion was Russian Orthodox. Catherine was raised a Christian. Catherine had spent a long time researching the Russian religion, so much so that she got sick from the constant strain. Medieval solutions to illnesses were not very progressive. Catherine was subjected to bloodletting. Bloodletting is the deliberate withdrawal of blood from a patient's body to prevent or cure diseases. This was achieved with a blade and a bowl of warm water, or sometimes leeches. Bloodletting, specifically, was done if the doctor thought that the patient's body was too warm and moist, and as blood is warm and moist, it must be removed from the person. Catherine was forced to undergo this treatment with the preferred method of leeches. As we can expect in the 21st century, this only made Catherine's condition worse. Her sickness progressed, and she was diagnosed with pneumonia. It was now suspected that Catherine's death was near. Empress Elizabeth called for a Christian priest to bless Catherine before her impending death, but instead, Catherine asked for a Russian Orthodox priest. This greatly impressed Empress Elizabeth. By some miracle, Catherine recovered. As soon as she did, her and Peter would be wed. Catherine and Peter were married in 1745 in St. Petersburg, Russia. Catherine would soon notice that married life with Peter was nothing like she expected. Instead of consummating the marriage, as the pair had been instructed to do, Peter would play with toy soldiers in bed, marching them all over Catherine and all around the room. Joanna did not help the stressful situation. At the engagement party of the now married couple, Joanna threw a fit as she was seated at the end of the table with the lower, but still noble, class, while Catherine and Peter sat at the other end. This outburst was not looked upon kindly by Empress Elizabeth, who sent Joanna to eat outside on her own, since she wanted to move so much. Joanna was furious. Catherine's recovery was not the only reason for the wedding being moved forward. While Catherine struggled with pneumonia, her spouse Peter contracted smallpox. Though recovered, the scars left his face visibly disfigured, and Catherine visibly shuddered when she first saw him. Empress Elizabeth was concerned that no one would want to marry Peter in this state. She wanted to confirm things with Catherine before anyone had a chance to change their mind. Not only would Peter play with toy soldiers, but he refused to sleep in the same room as Catherine unless forced. Catherine got pregnant, but it soon resulted in a miscarriage. Later, she became pregnant again, but through an affair with Count Sergei Saltykov, a Russian military officer. This affair began in 1752, and Sergei is the presumed father of Catherine's first son, Peter III. Catherine was not the only one to have an affair. Peter slept with many women. Though their names were not noted, Peter's promiscuous nature did not go unnoticed. On the 5th of January, 1762, Empress Elizabeth of Russia died. Catherine was greatly saddened by this, but Peter resumed as normal. This death meant that Peter would now ascend to the Russian throne. This made everyone anxious, as Peter's maturity was nowhere to be found. At Empress Elizabeth's funeral, Peter made a mockery of the entire service and refused to follow Russian Orthodox customs. Catherine, on the other hand, behaved perfectly, as expected of a monarch. Now in power, Peter began to make some very drastic changes. After many years of fighting, Prussia was close to winning the war, but Peter gave up, all prizes won by Prussia, to try and earn back a small part of Denmark that was lost years ago. The people of Russia hated this decision, and Catherine herself was horrified. Catherine decided it was time to begin the plot of the supplicant. This was her plan to overthrow her husband. Catherine the Great overthrew her husband, Tsar Peter III, through a swift and well-organised coup in 1762. Catherine was helped by her affair partner at the time, Grigory Orlov, and his brothers. They were not only Catherine's lovers, but key figures in the military. They led regiments that supported her cause. Many high-ranking officials, such as senators, became key helpers. Catherine, with the support of Grigory Orlov and his brothers, began planning to overthrow Peter. Everyone who was in on it had been instructed to keep the plans a secret, but Catherine and her team had scares numerous times as they thought the word had got out. Luckily, each time it was just a false alarm. On June 28, 1762, Catherine the Great, with support of the Imperial Guard, led troops to the Winter Palace, where they forced Peter to abdicate. Peter was arrested and forced to abdicate. He died in prison just 8 days later, with suspicions falling on Alexei Orlov, Grigory's brother. Catherine's coronation as Empress of Russia was on September 22nd, 1762. She would now forever be known as Catherine the Great. Catherine was known for many things during her reign, expanding Russia's territory, enacting legal and administrative reforms, and promoting the arts and sciences. She also played a key role in Russia's participation in European political and cultural life. Her reign lasted from 1762 to 1796. Catherine also had much to do with education. She opened primary and secondary schools and founded the Smolny Institute for Noble Girls, expanding educational opportunities. The Smolny Institute for Girls, officially known as the Society for the Upbringing of Noble Girls, was created in 1764. The name comes from the Smolny Monastery on the left bank of Neva River in St. Petersburg. The school was inspired by St. Cyr, a girls' boarding school in France. Catherine the Great wanted to raise educated, culturally aware, and loyal subjects. Catherine held public exams and performances at this school. She was known for taking her favourite students on promenades in the summer gardens. Graduates were known for their talent and stunning manners and were considered to have made great brides. Catherine the Great also helped the advancement on the medical side of things. Catherine championed the idea of variolation. This was an early form of inoculation against smallpox. Trigger warning, needles and talking about wounds. Variolation involved introducing small evacuations from a smallpox sore. This could be pus or a dried scab. It would then be injected into a healthy patient, working as an early form of vaccine to craft future immunity and prevent smallpox outbreak from spreading. Not everything was sunshine and rainbows for Catherine the Great. Just like almost every other monarch, as far as history can count, Catherine faced rumours, some more outrageous than others. Similar to her now-deceased husband, Catherine was also known for her promiscuous nature. She had between 12 and 22 lovers. This was the main cause of many rumours, the most outrageous of them all being that Catherine had slept with a horse. There is no evidence to support the claim of bestiality. Even after her death, people theorised that Catherine died from being crushed by a horse during sex, rather than a stroke, which is what was confirmed in the autopsy. People started to suspect that Catherine's children were illegitimate. Some historians to this day question if Paul I is actually Peter Ulrich's child, due to how late he was conceived into their marriage. One of Catherine's lovers, Grigory Potemkin, was known for his terrible standards. At a time when hygiene was bad, Potemkin would have been considered appalling. At some point after 1762, his eye became infected, likely with pink eye, and fell out. Potemkin refused to wear an eye patch and made no effort whatsoever to cover the empty socket. Potemkin died of typhoid on the 16th of October, 1791. Many people ask the question, who was Catherine the Great really in love with? Of course, it is hard to tell, as we can't simply dig her out of her grave to ask her. But most people theorise that it is Grigory Potemkin. Others dislike this idea, as Potemkin happened to be the most rich and influential of all of Catherine's suitors, and love plays no role with money. Catherine's appearance is not often touched on. Catherine was a very short woman, only reaching about 5 feet, with natural dark hair and bright blue eyes. While she wasn't considered particularly beautiful, she was considered very attractive with her intelligence, passion and charm, although a woman's intelligence was not properly recognised at this time, let alone in the 1700s. An interesting, but much less well-known fact about Catherine the Great is that she was reportedly tone deaf and needed a signal to applaud at performances. This was very surprising for a queen, or empress, of Russia. But Catherine indeed was not born Russian, as at the start of the story we know that she was born in Poland but grew up in Germany. Pugachev, a former Russian army lieutenant, led a major rebellion against Empress Catherine the Great in the 1770s, claiming to be the late Tsar Peter III. This claim was ridiculous to Catherine, as she had proclaimed him dead and, as some theorise, ordered him to be killed. This revolt was known as Pugachev's Rebellion. It was a significant challenge to Catherine's rule and highlighted the deep social unrest, particularly regarding serfs in Russia during the 1700s. For those who are unsure what exactly a serf is, the exact textbook definition is an agricultural labourer bound by the feudal system who is tied to working on their lord's estate. Pugachev told the people of Russia that he would abolish serfdom altogether if they gave him their support. Many agreed with this plan, as serfs did not want to be tied to the nobles and their great expanse of land. A serf falls somewhere between a slave and a free man, but they were treated very badly in the 1700s. Pugachev's forces captured several towns and cities, posing as a serious threat to Catherine's reign and the established order. Catherine dispatched troops to suppress the rebellion, eventually defeating Pugachev's forces in 1774. The rebellion, which started in 1773, quickly gained support from various groups, including serfs, peasants, and even volunteers from Siberia. In the end, Pugachev did not get the victory as dreamed. Pugachev was captured, taken to Moscow, and executed in 1775. He was aged 33 when he died, and his execution method was beheading and dismemberment. Trigger warning, I will now be speaking about the process of being hung, drawn and quartered and burned at the stake. Okay, starting now. One form of dismemberment is being hung, drawn and quartered. This means that he was hung until he only had a breath of life left in him. He was then removed from the noose and laid out, often on a ladder but sometimes on the floor. This was a public display. First, he would have his manhood removed with a knife, and he would then be drawn, which means cutting a line down his torso and then removing his organs. The organs would then be displayed in public places to serve as a warning to other criminals and the general public. This is an incredibly painful process, as one can imagine, used specifically as a torture method. You could have this punishment inflicted on you if you committed any of these crimes: sexual assault, burglary, murder, sheep theft, and forgery. This punishment was only ever applied to men, as women who had committed these crimes would instead be burned at the stake. This was most often used in the Middle Ages for women who were suspected to be witches or had committed high treason against the king or queen. In another video, I will go into detail on the witch trials, but that is a tale for another time. Back to Catherine the Great. The rebellion, led by Pugachev, while ultimately suppressed, led Catherine to strengthen the nobility's power and tighten control over the peasantry. Pugachev's rebellion is considered the largest peasant uprising in pre-Soviet Russian history and has been the subject of historical accounts and literary works. Catherine the Great had 3 children: Paul I of Russia, Alexei Grigorovich Babrinsky, I apologise if I pronounced that wrong, and Anna Petronova. Anna Petronova was Catherine's only daughter. Her father was Peter III of Russia. Anna was a member of the House of Romanov. She was born on the 20th of December, 1757. After a lot of research, I was unable to find when specifically she died, and I did not want to say something in case it was unreliable. But she died a few days after her son was born from postpartum infections, specifically puerperal fever. For those who still remember Joanna, Catherine the Great's mother, she returned to Germany in 1745 after being permanently banished from Russia. She was permanently banned because she was secretly supporting Prussian interests. Catherine and her mother would never meet again. Joanna died on the 30th of May, 1760. She died in Paris, France, from natural causes. That is the most detailed reason for her death. Even long after her death, Catherine's reign was commercialised. There are several movies and TV shows based off of her life. The Scarlet Empress is an American-made film, specifically a historical drama based on the life of Catherine the Great. It was made in 1934 and stars Hollywood actress Marlene Dietrich and John Lodge. I apologise if I pronounced that name wrong. Another movie was made in 1995. It was simply titled Catherine the Great. There is also a TV series called The Great, which loosely follows Catherine's rise to power but does not claim to be historically accurate. The show's creators share that they were going for comedy over accuracy, so it is advised to be taken with a grain of salt. There is also a play written about Catherine the Great, and the play inspired the TV series. Some people theorise that due to her many struggles, Catherine suffered from a number of mental illnesses. A dead person cannot be diagnosed, let alone one who died hundreds of years ago, but people suspect this because of the great amount of stress she was under. Not just because she was the Empress of Russia for 34 years, but she started 2 wars and beat over a dozen uprisings. Before any of this happened, she also had to handle the stress of Peter and his bad decisions, and even further before that, dealing with the pressure that her mother put on her and being the glass child for a number of years in her life. The glass child is a much more modern term. It is used to describe the sibling of a child with special needs or a chronic illness, and often feels overlooked or unwanted due to their siblings' needs. There is no professional diagnosis for a glass child. It is just a theorised syndrome which Catherine likely suffered from. Catherine the Great's younger brother, Wilhelm, was very sickly for his entire life. As previously mentioned, he died at age 12 from scarlet fever. Catherine was often in her brother's shadow. Her parents made it very clear that Wilhelm was a superior child. Despite all these struggles, Catherine flourished in adulthood. As her story comes to a close, I will quickly touch on her death. Catherine the Great died on the 17th of November, 1796. She was 67 years old when she died, which was practically geriatric for her time. She died at Winter Palace, the first place she came to when she got to Russia decades ago. Catherine the Great died in a way that some people find quite funny. She died on the toilet. This, of course, raises a lot of questions. She had a stroke, and unfortunately, just happened to be on the toilet. It was noted that the toilet seat broke. She collapsed on the floor of her bathroom and died in bed a day later. After Catherine the Great's death in November 1796, her son, Paul I, became Emperor of Russia. Paul was 42 years old when he became emperor, and he was estranged from his mother. Just as Peter had done to Empress Elizabeth, Paul began to reverse a lot of Catherine's policies. He attempted to centralise administrative control. He wanted to limit the amount of power that nobles had. Paul had a definitive line of male succession, the Romanov family. Paul's reign was relatively short and finished when he was assassinated in 1801. Catherine the Great lived a long and interesting life. Born Sophie, or some people like to say Sophia, she changed her name to Catherine when she joined the Russian Orthodox Church. She was most well known for overthrowing her husband and westernizing Russia. That's all for today. Thank you so much for listening. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed this story. Please let me know in the comment section down below what other historicals you would like to hear and anything else you think I could change about these videos to improve them. This is my first video on this channel, so I hope it's successful and that you guys liked it. I got the information for this video from various websites on Google, not Wikipedia, I promise. I also searched a bunch of YouTube videos and looked through various history textbooks. If this was a good mix, make sure to let me know. Thank you so much for your time. I hope you enjoyed it. If you have been listening for this long, comment a heart emoji. This heart specifically. Now, I hope you will have a wonderful evening. Look out for the stars. Bye!